What on earth do you think you're doing?
Oh, I was dreaming.
Was it your flying dream again?
Yeah, I was flying.
Silly Nana.
Oh. Have you ever dreamed a dream that was so intense, so alive, that when you woke up you weren't sure if you were still dreaming? Have you ever had an experience that was so strange, so surreal, that you had to pinch yourself to make sure you were still awake? Now, although I wasn't much of an athlete at high school, when I sat my A-levels I decided to take up hill running. So buying a pair of some of the most overpriced training shoes and putting on my jogging bottoms, I began my cross-country fitness program. Well, to be honest, I must have got about 20 yards, and gasping for breath, I fell to my knees. My lungs felt like those brown grocery bags that you get, but with all of the air sucked out of them. It was painful. However, undeterred, I kept my training program every afternoon, and eventually I was able to run to the top of that hill without stopping. And I can remember this one very surreal occasion. I had just arrived home from college, and I put on my kit as usual, started out on my run. The sky around me looked kind of dark in the distance, but there was no rain. However, as I approached the summit of the hill, the sky suddenly grew really black around me. And before I knew it, I was listening to the crash of thunder and watching the flash of lightning. Now, I'm no meteorologist, but even I know that lightning tends to strike the tallest object. And on top of that hill, well, I was the tallest object in the county. What had started out as an ordinary, mundane run had now turned into a life-threatening power encounter, and I was in the centre of it. The air was electric and you could smell the charge. Now, fortunately for me, I survived that power encounter, but the memory of that event is still just as real today as when it first happened. It was complete sensory overload. It was also the day that I stopped hill running. In Luke chapter 9, Jesus says that there are some who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God come with power. Now, 8 days later after saying this, Jesus chose 3 of his disciples, Peter, James and John, and he led them up to the top of a very high mountain. Now, this mountain was Mount Hermon. And when they got to the top of this mountain, as Jesus was praying, the disciples were so tired that they kind of rested and fell asleep. And as Jesus was praying, his countenance changed and his face began to blaze like the sun. And what Jesus was doing here, he was revealing himself as the Shekinah glory of the Old Testament that had taken on flesh and bone, and now he was revealing who he really was to his own disciples. When the disciples see the brilliance of this light, they kind of wake up and arouse from their slumber, and as they're looking at Jesus, they can see that he's radiating this light, and all of a sudden this cloud envelops them and 2 Old Testament prophets appear, Moses and Elijah. Now Moses, as we know, kind of represents the Jewish law, the Torah, and Elijah represents the prophets, or the Nevi'im. And as Elijah and as Moses appear, they begin to talk to Jesus, and they begin to talk to him about his departure, or as the Greek texts tell us, his exodus. You see, the Jewish people in those days, they had this two Messiah concept. They believed in this Messiah called Messiah, son of Joseph, and they also believed in this second Messiah called Messiah, son of David. Now, Messiah, son of Joseph, according to Jewish tradition, was a Messiah who was going to come, and he was going to suffer, and he was going to die on behalf of the Jewish people. And then later on, this second Messiah, this Messiah, son of David, was going to appear, and he was going to resurrect this first Messiah, son of Joseph, back to life again. But by the time of Jesus, the first Messiah, the Messiah, son of Joseph, he was kind of forgotten about. Because they were under Roman dominion, Roman domination, they so wanted the Roman Empire overthrown that all they looked for was this Messiah, son of David, to come and rescue them from under the heavy hand of Rome. And so when Jesus appeared as this suffering servant, they couldn't believe that he was the Messiah at all. You see, he had come as Messiah, son of Joseph. And on this occasion, he took Peter, James and John with him to the top of Mount Hermon. And here you see the representation of the law, the Torah, the representation of the prophets. And they're talking about Jesus' exodus, Jesus' departure from this world. Because Peter, James and John, they were expecting Jesus to establish his kingdom on earth right there and right then. And what Jesus was giving them a glimpse of, he was giving them the glimpse of the kingdom that he's going to have at his second coming, when he comes as Messiah, son of David, the reigning and ruling king. If you study the Old Testament scriptures and you study what the Messianic kingdom is going to be like, it tells us that it's going to be a high and exalted mountain in the earth, that the glory of the Lord is going to cover the whole earth, and everyone's going to see it. And as they're on top of this high mountain, Mount Hermon, and as Jesus is beginning to radiate the Shekinah glory, they believe that Jesus is establishing his kingdom right there and right then. And this is why the Apostle Peter turns around and he says what he says. He says, "Lord, it's good for us to be here. Shall I erect 3 tents or 3 tabernacles?" You know, if you study the book of Zechariah, especially chapter 14, you begin to see that the kingdom of God is prefigured by the Feast of Tabernacles. And it was Jewish tradition that when the Messiah came and when he was going to establish his kingdom on earth, what you're supposed to do is to erect tabernacles. And this is exactly what Peter was doing according to Jewish tradition. He wanted to erect 3 tabernacles, one for Jesus, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And as Peter is saying this, he's enveloped by this glory cloud. And God the Father speaks. And he says, "This is my son. Listen to him." Because up until now, they haven't wanted to hear that Jesus actually has not come to establish his kingdom on the earth. He's come to die for the sins of Israel and the sins of the whole earth. As quickly as the glory cloud appeared, it disappears. Jesus is sat there looking kind of human again, and he commands them not to speak of this moment until the day he is taken up into glory. Now, there are many Christians in the world today, and they kind of flit from one conference to another, and they're looking for these kind of glory mountaintop experiences, and they want to kind of live on these highs, and they want their Christian walk to always be these kind of mountaintop glorious experiences. But the reason that we have these mountaintop experiences with God from time to time is not for us. You see, when God draws close to us with his power and with his glory, and we have these mountaintop experiences, it's to fit us for service in the valley below. You see, God gives us His light, not so that we can just enjoy it. It's so that we can enable those who can't see to see.